Hey guys, Mike Abler here, and this is yet another review that I've done for my YouTube channel that I started doing reviews on here last summer, but then for one reason or another, I never did any reviews until a few weeks ago. And this week we'll be talking about probably one of my all-time favorite horror movies, and I think I can count like maybe five, maybe, is the Evil Dead 2 Dead by Dawn movie. And a part of me was kind of debating about maybe waiting until October to review the entire trilogy, but I feel like there are other horror movies that are just as iconic that I could probably dig into in October. And I recently bought the DVD for Evil Dead 2 and I saw it last Friday. The Friday before the Friday that was a week before the one that happened 2 days ago. So I kind of thought that that would be a good movie to review, and I think I might be going a long time on this movie because I do enjoy it, and since I kind of want to get this review out, and I don't have a lot of time to work on making this as goofy and creative as I could. So I'm probably not gonna throw that much special. I'm not gonna throw that many images into it. But anyway, so this is gonna be a really hard movie to review. Not because it's hard to explain, and not because it's hard to get a grasp of what's happening as you're watching it. But it's hard for me to. I'm gonna try my best to not spoil the entire movie. But if you're going to talk about the sequel, you at least have to give away what happened in the previous movie, in this case, the first Evil Dead. And the first Evil Dead was released in 1981 and was it gained a lot of notoriety for being this really graphic, violent, really disturbing movie. And Stephen King said it was one of the greatest horror movies he had seen in years. And that's kind of what got people to pay attention to the Sam Raimi film. And Evil Dead 2, Raimi had always wanted to make a sequel to the first Evil Dead, but had he not failed at his second feature film, Crime Wave, I think this movie probably would have come out in either the late 80s or early 90s. There's already a huge gap in between movies. The first Evil Dead came out in 1981, and Evil Dead 2 came out in 1987. So that's a huge. That's a 6 year gap. I know it doesn't sound like much, but it is that is kind of a huge gap, especially when you consider horror film franchises like The Nightmare on Elm Street and the Friday the 13th, which basically after the first movies in either of those respective franchises were released, there'd be at least two or three other sequels that would happen in the next 2 or 3 years. So with Evil Dead 2, it's interesting because if you've seen the end of the first movie, you know that it ends with the main character Ash surviving the demons that. Okay, the whole plot of the first Evil Dead is that. I need to do this just to give context. So the first Evil Dead was about these five college kids going off to a remote cabin. They find this book bound in human flesh referred to as the Book of the Dead. They listen to a recording that speaks the hellish incantations that allow the demons to be free and basically possess living creatures and humans however they may wish, and turning them into these. They're basically these demons turn you into zombies, but they're not called zombies, they're called deadites. I I mean, it works, I'll take it. And the first movie ends with Ash stumbling out of the cabin he was staying in after watching all his friends die. And this unseen force goes plowing right to the cabin and taking him along with it. And with Evil Dead 2, they didn't. When they were doing Evil Dead 2, for some reason the creators did not have the rights to the first Evil Dead, so they had to reenact the first movie to give you an understanding of how Ash got to the cabin, what he was doing there, and what led up to where the sequel starts happening. So, and Ash in this movie, he's still played by Bruce Campbell, but Campbell is playing the character a little differently this time. The first movie was this very graphic, disturbing horror movie, but the sequel, while it is an R-rated film, there's a lot more goofy, dark slapstick in it. For example, when the demons attack in the second movie, they take over Ash's girlfriend, forcing Ash to kill his girlfriend in order to get rid of a demon. But then his girlfriend comes back to life through evil magic. No one really. It's impossible to try to explain the logic of how the Evil Dead in these movies work. They seem to do whatever is convenient for the plot. Whatever is going to make the story better, or whatever is going to be the most scary, tension building thing. So, Ash's girlfriend comes back to life. He decapitates her, and then her demonic head bites him, and then his hand starts going evil. And I say this because not only does it lead to the reason why Ash is more proactive to fight off against the demons, aside from the fact that they took his girlfriend, but he's a much braver character in this movie. In the first film, he didn't really start to fight back until near the end, and it wasn't like in this movie where he's quoting badass lines or using weapons. He's kind of a shy coward who's forced to be brave. In this movie, he does become a much braver character, and I kind of feel like even though he was a little obnoxious with, well, there's some lines early in this movie where I kind of thought, okay, he's being a little dumb, or he's kind of being a dick, but the progression from everyman to horror action hero, it's very natural in this movie because he is a genuinely nice guy. There's sometimes where he's trying to be charming and it works on his girlfriend before the demons attack, but yeah. So the Ash character in this movie, I think the transformation into the hero here is a little more believable. The third movie, well, I don't want to get into that, and I think I've spent almost 8 minutes talking about the background for this movie than the actual movie itself. So I think the characterization of Ash is a lot more fun. There's a lot of quotable lines from this movie that I reference all the time, and the other side characters that eventually come in. We got this blue collar workman, Jake, his unrealistically attractive girlfriend. I mean, seriously, Jake is walking around missing half his teeth, and he looks like he's 40 years old, and he's got this 20-year-old tough gal who's A, taller than him, B, someone I would not expect to fall in love with a guy who's missing half his teeth, and 3, and this is kind of disappointing, is that Bobby Joe, Jake's girlfriend, she seems like this kind of tough, strong woman, but she's probably the most cowardly of the group in the movie. And the whole story is that Annie Nobe and her boyfriend Ed, who are working with her father to study the Book of the Dead, they end up coming back to the cabin to find it destroyed, blood everywhere, so they naturally assume that Ash was the one who killed her parents. But then she finds out within the next few minutes that it's actually an evil force that's causing all this mayhem, and Ash is just a victim trying to defend himself. So I think what makes the movie work very well is that, again, the first movie had some unintentionally funny moments. So this one, Sam Raimi, the director, decided to just make this a blend between legit scary and goofy slapstick. A prime example of a scary scene is when Ash is looking outside the window of the cabin and he sees his girlfriend pop up right in front of him as a demon, starts grabbing him by the neck and starts slamming him into the wooden barriers that Ash has put up. And then there's a scene where Ash's hand is possessed, and there's a scene where the hand is just beating him up, smashing him over the head with dinner plates. And then there's one scene where Ash is trying to shoot the creature, and the creature just flicks him off, and the hand just flicks him off. That's pretty funny. Um, so I think most of the characters are strong, with the exception of Bobby Joe, who looks like she'd be a tough character, but then she starts being a panicky little child. I mean, in another horror movie, Alien, I could see why Lambert was sort of the scaredy cat because she was always kind of this timid person. But with Bobby Joe, she seems like someone that could hold her own. And then later in the movie, it just becomes obvious that she's just a frightened little bunny rabbit. So yeah, I feel like, and I understand that Ash is supposed to be the hero, but you could at least make her a little more. You could at least make Bobby Joe more proactive. And the movie kind of follows the typical horror movie tropes. A group of people are trying to stop this monster or monsters, and most of them end up getting killed in one way or another until one remains. And I feel like, oh my god, I went 12 minutes. I feel like with the action and the one-liners, I'm not gonna go through every single line that I think is amazing because if I did that, this review would be like 20 minutes, and a 20-minute video without any video clips or jokes is probably gonna get pretty old. So I'll try to keep the next few minutes under 5 minutes. This is easily the longest review I've ever done. Um, but there's a lot to talk about with Evil Dead 2. And I think that this is the point where Ash became the character that we all are familiar with. I mean, it's kind of like with Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger was known as sort of like this dark jokester who made jokes about killing people while killing them. We didn't really see that as much in the first movie. Same thing here. We didn't really see Ash as the triumphant hero a whole lot in the first movie. The second one, he just becomes superhero. Well, superhero without the super aspect of that compound word. Um, so I think if I'm trying to think of other things that were wrong with the movie, is that I kind of think. Well, I mean, the whole idea of it, they couldn't get the footage from the first movie to play over at the beginning and just had it be reduced to Ash and his girlfriend. I I will say I don't really think that's a legitimate critique because that's not necessarily part of the film. I mean, you could argue that's part of the production, but that doesn't really hurt the movie. And I can understand why they would keep it reduced to just Ash and his girlfriend. Because if they tried to call up all the original actors from the first movie, that would have, I think this movie would have been like 2.5 hours long. And that's not what you're here for. When people come to see this kind of horror movie, they're in it for the jokes, the one liners, and the jump scares. And this movie, um, I will say, this is probably my favorite horror movie aside from Jaws. For a long time, Jaws was number one because I was really into sharks. But this movie is definitely the best my favorite horror film of all time. It's because I mean I don't mind scary movies, but I kind of like films that can be dark but also funny, or one or the other, or a mix of both. So I honestly think that Evil Dead 2 is a great movie to watch. If you want a good cheesy B movie night, I definitely recommend this one. And if you want to see the other movies like Evil Dead and Evil Dead 3, you'll definitely have a fun time watching them. But make sure you're watching it with people that are over 17 years old and are not your parents, because I don't think people beyond the age of late teens or early 20s are going to really enjoy these movies. But they're a lot of fun. The gore is pretty creative. There's a few good jump scares. The characters are a lot of fun. Even if Bobby Joe is kind of a coward in this case when she could have been something more. But the other characters are pretty strong. So, all in all, good movie. And I will see you guys next week. Later.